Hello everyone, today we're going to be making a cube hacky sack. Now I have made a few of these in the past. First one ever was perfect. Others after that failed, but I have learned since then and now can make it with some very simple stuff. All you will need is the tools here, and we're going to first start out with the fabric, template, ruler, and pen and marker. Right now we're going to go ahead and get this fabric stretched out and laid out the way we want it. We want to have the fancy side, or the side you prefer to look at, on face down, while the back of it is going to be what we're going to draw on. Now we're going to start with the Sharpie as far as outlining and everything like that. Like I said, we're going to go ahead and mark this out in marker first, and then after we are done with that, we're going to use the pen to go ahead and tick off some corners, some very important corners, to allow for our seam allowance that we need. Now the template is 6 inches by 2 inches, which will allow us 2 inch by 2 inch faces for our cube hacky sack. We're going to mark out the seam allowance, and once it's all marked out, we're going to go ahead and take our ruler and put in those lines lightly with the pen. Now, after we've measured it all out, we're going to go ahead and get our scissors and cut it out. Once it's all cut out, we're going to go ahead and mark out 2 inches on the long sides, so that we have 2 inch by 2 inch squares. Now these ticks are just for us to put our pins in the correct place and to allow us a visual to stop sewing when we need to. Take our pins, and really only need 2, but it's good and handy to have an extra couple ready just in case. And as you see, we will actually end up using those. Now remember to match the middle to the end, and you're going to match up those marks that we just made so that it makes a 2 inch by 2 inch seam. And remember to put your like faces together. The outside needs to be facing each other. So the face you want to face outside needs to be facing each other, which will allow you to see the appropriate side that you wish to when you turn this inside out. So if you have a sewing machine, this will work just well for you. If not, then you can use the hand sewing method, which is basically the same process. Now the sewing machine, you're going to want to make sure that whenever you begin, you go ahead and go forward and then go back on your stitch to go and seal that stitch in and keep it strong. And then you're just going to run it through, and then when you get to the end, you're going to go ahead and do the same thing, running it back and forth to go ahead and seal up that stitch and keep it strong so that it will not unravel on you. And as you can see here, the stitch is much thicker, which means it's not going to want to come up and apart on these corners. Alright, now it's time to move on to the next side. Same process, we're going to pin the end to the middle, and we're going to make sure that it matches up nice and square. We want this to be as accurate as possible in order to have a very true cube hacky sack. Otherwise, it will look very much like a rock. which is not nearly quite the thing you want to hacky with. Now that we're all sewed up, we're going to go ahead and repeat this process of end to middle, but with the other ends. And this will go ahead and get us set up for success for when we start to work on the sides of the hacky sack, which are the most difficult. And here you see I did 3 pins, and it is handy to have extra pins when you need it. Now be careful that you do so straight, otherwise you will have to cut and undo the stitch you did and redo it later, which is what I had to do a few times on this project. Now here you see me go ahead and cut a little small 1/8 inch snippet right at the corner, or where the corner would be, just so that it will make it easier to fold and sew this when we move on to those new sides. Now that we have this side pinned, we're going to go ahead and sew. Now this will be the same process for the rest of the sides. Remember to leave one side open and unsewn in order to put the sand, beans, or pebbles, or whatever you're going to use for filling inside of it. We're going to do the same to this side. So now all the sides are pretty much sewn. There was a little bit of an overlap there where the fabric folded over, but that's okay. It won't hinder the rest of the project. And now we have this last final slide, and we're going to go ahead and measure out 1/2 inch marks from each corner to give us a 1 inch hole once we finish the sewing of this. Remember, you want to sew 1/2 inch in on either end. You have to leave this middle 1 inch open to allow us to put in our filling. It is good practice for this part to go ahead and go back and forth a few extra times just to reinforce the hole so that we don't accidentally rip it open when we start pulling this inside out. And now we got it. It's time to move on to the filling. Now for me, I decided I wanted to include a plastic baggie inside my bean bag so that it keeps the sand from getting out too quickly. However, it will not be a permanent solution since it will eventually also break, especially using this method. Seams will rip open and plastic is plastic. Now that I got my template, I'm going to go ahead and tape it up so it looks very similar to our cube hacky sack. This is of course unnecessary. You don't have to do this. I decided I wanted to, but if you wanted to do this, go right ahead. Now we're going to be moving on to the next part of the actual filling the bag. And if you did decide to use plastic or a little plastic baggie, you're going to want to make sure you unfold your bag to the best of your ability, and then you're going to crumple up your bag, put it inside, and then try to reopen the bag with a pen or stylus of some sort. Or in my case, I actually was able to blow it open like a balloon, and that did work. We're going to get our funnel, and you can use anything. If you happen to have a funnel already, perfect. But if not, you can make an easy paper funnel out of any kind of scrap paper you've got, and then pour your filling in it and into the bag. Depending on the type of filling you're using, if you're using actual beans, you may want a bigger nozzle at the end of your funnel just so that the beans can come through. Sand in this case is so fine that it really didn't matter too much. You're going to make sure to go ahead and get that edge as flat as possible before taping it, just so that you reduce any chances of holes. And then you're going to also want to reinforce it with another layer of tape. But once that's all done, go ahead and stuff it into the hacky sack, and then you'll be moving on to the last bit of sewing. Now for this part, we're going to be hand sewing, hand stitching this. You could use a sewing machine. However, a sewing machine may get bogged up, or in my case, it might try to suck and eat the fabric as you're sewing so close to the edge. So for me, it was easier to just hand sew it. However, if you are going to hand sew a material like this, you want to make sure you choose the appropriate needle. Anything too big, it will be too hard to get the needle through. And anything too small, if the material is too thick, you won't have it will be harder to push the needle through. So choose the needle that will work for you and go with that. Tie a knot in the end, and this will effectively double the threading, giving you at least double the strength. I would sew over the back of my stitches while moving down the line to reinforce the edge, but a straight stitch will do as well. One final snip, we have finished our hacky sack, and I believe it's time to maybe take this out for a little bit of a test drive. Thank you so much for watching. I am by no means a professional hacky sack player, but I do thoroughly enjoy the activity, and I hope you do too. Until next time, thanks for watching the video, and have yourself a great day.